Hi, I'm Emily. I want to share something very personal with you, something I've carried with me for years. It's about my mom, Karen, and her side of the family. The people I was born into, but who made me feel like I was never quite enough. Their constant criticism wasn't just passing remarks. It was like a shadow hanging over everything I did. It shaped how I saw myself, how I believed the world saw me. This story isn't about bitterness, though there's plenty of that in it. It's about understanding, healing, and learning to stand up for yourself, even when the people closest to you seem to hold you back. My mom's family, Aunt Lisa, Aunt Susan, and my cousin Jessica, were always around. They weren't openly cruel, but their words cut deeper than anyone else's. I wanted their approval, their warmth, but I never got it. Instead, their criticisms felt like little knives, slicing through my confidence. One of my earliest memories of this was when I was 13. My mom had taken me to a big family reunion at Aunt Lisa's house. I was excited but nervous. I carefully chose my favorite sweater, a soft, oversized knit that made me feel safe. I thought I looked nice, but the moment I stepped inside, I felt their eyes on me. Aunt Susan glanced my way and whispered to Aunt Lisa, "Look at that sweater. Doesn't she have any sense of style?" The words were quiet but sharp, and I heard every syllable. My cheeks burned, and I wished I could disappear. Later at dinner, trying to break the ice, I share my recent achievement. I got an A on my math test. My voice was hopeful. Aunt Lisa looked me over coolly and said, "That's nice, Emily, but you really need to work harder on your English and history if you want to get anywhere." The bluntness knocked the wind out of me. I barely touched my food the rest of the evening. From then on, I became hyper-aware of their judgments. Every glance, every comment seemed loaded with criticism. Nothing I did was quite right. It felt like walking a tightrope in front of a crowd waiting for me to fall. After one particularly tough visit, I found myself asking my mom, "Why do they always pick on me? Why don't they ever say anything nice?" She sighed, looking tired and distant. "Emily, families are complicated. Sometimes you have to learn to ignore the negative stuff." I felt my heart tighten. "But why don't you stand up for me?" I pressed. She avoided my eyes. "I try, sweetheart, but sometimes keeping the peace means not rocking the boat." Her words felt like a dismissal. I wanted protection, but she asked me to bear it. As I grew older, the criticism didn't fade. When I started volunteering at the local animal shelter, I was proud to tell my family. At a barbecue, I excitedly shared, "I've been helping at the shelter every weekend." Jessica rolled her eyes and said, "Volunteering's nice and all, but are you sure you're not just avoiding real responsibilities?" The words felt like a punch. I couldn't take it and called Jessica. "Why are you always so mean? I'm really trying." Her voice was cold and sharp. "I'm just being honest. Maybe if you worked harder, you wouldn't mess up so much." I didn't argue. I felt like I wasn't even worth defending. I tried changing myself to fit in. I swapped my clothes for ones I thought they'd like, dropped hobbies they ridiculed, even changed how I talked. But no matter what I did, the criticism followed. One holiday dinner stands out in my mind. I had been practicing piano for months and wanted to perform for my family. After I finished, Aunt Lisa said flatly, "It's good, but maybe try something easier next time. This piece doesn't suit your skill level." Aunt Susan added, "Maybe you'd be better off focusing on something more useful." I felt like I was disappearing. On my 16th birthday, Aunt Lisa gave me a scarf. When I thanked her, she said, "It's nice, but the color doesn't really match your skin tone. Try something else next time." I felt invisible. I confided in my mom often. One night I said, "Mom, I don't know how much more I can take. I feel like I'm never good enough." She looked sad and said, "I know, sweetheart. I wish things were different, but sometimes families don't behave how we want." I asked why she didn't stand up for me. She said she tried but feared making things worse. The negativity followed me to college. When I told my mom about their comments, she said, "Try not to take it personally." But their words stung. Finally, I realized I had to put myself first. I blocked Jessica on social media. stopped answering Aunt Lisa's calls, and declined invitations. It was hard and lonely, but every time I remembered their voices telling me I wasn't enough, I knew I was doing the right thing. Without their criticism, I started to breathe again. I focused on school, made friends who supported me, and slowly rebuilt my confidence. I started a blog sharing my story. The response was overwhelming. So many people understood. I realized I wasn't alone. Sometimes the bravest thing you can do is walk away from people who hurt you, even family. Family isn't just about blood. It's about love and respect. If you're going through something similar, remember, your feelings matter. You deserve people who lift you up. Setting boundaries. When I think back to those years, it's hard not to remember the quiet moments alone in my room after family visits, staring at the ceiling, wondering why their words always cut so deep. I remember the sting of Aunt Susan's voice echoing in my head, the judgment in Aunt Lisa's eyes, and Jessica's cold remarks that felt like they were meant to break me down. One particular evening still stands out. I was 16, sitting at the kitchen table, my hands trembling over a letter I'd just received from my college. It was an acceptance letter, something I had worked so hard for. I was proud and nervous all at once. I told my mom as soon as she came home, "Mom, I got into college. They accepted me." She smiled, but then her face grew serious. "That's wonderful, Emily. You worked hard." Later that week, Aunt Lisa called. I was excited to tell her the news, hoping for some encouragement. When I said, "I got accepted to State University," she paused and replied, "That's fine, but you do know it's not the best school, right? Maybe you should aim higher." The words felt like a punch in the gut. I swallowed hard. "I'm proud of myself," I said quietly. "Well, you should be," she said, but the tone wasn't warm. Jessica chimed in during the next family gathering, smirking. "State U? I thought you wanted to do better. Maybe you're just settling." I wanted to scream, but instead I smiled and said, "I'm excited about it." They all smiled back, but it was the kind of smile that said, "We're judging you, but we're being polite." That night, I called my best friend Sarah, the one person who always made me feel seen and valued. "They're so cruel," I said, my voice breaking. "I don't know why I even try around them." Sarah's voice was steady. "Emily, you're amazing. Don't let them dim your light." Her words were like a bomb. I realized I needed more of that in my life. People who believed in me instead of tearing me down. The turning point came during my second year of college. I had been struggling with my confidence, but I also had grown stronger. One day, I got a message from Aunt Lisa. She wanted to visit. My heart sank. I debated whether to cancel, but I decided to face it head-on. I invited her to my dorm. When she arrived, I was nervous but determined to be honest. After some small talk, I finally said, "Lisa, I need to tell you something. Your words and the way you treat me, it hurts. I don't feel like I'm enough around you." She looked surprised, then defensive. "I was only trying to help you improve. It doesn't feel like help. It feels like criticism that breaks me down." I took a deep breath. "I want to have a relationship with you, but I need it to be built on respect." She was quiet for a moment. Then, she said, "I didn't realize I hurt you that much." That conversation didn't fix everything, but it opened a door. After that, I set boundaries. When the criticism came, I called it out or walked away. I started saying, "I don't appreciate that," or "Please don't speak to me that way." It wasn't easy. There were times they pushed back, times I felt guilty for standing up for myself. But slowly they adjusted. Jessica never fully warmed up, but the dynamic with Aunt Lisa and Aunt Susan improved. More importantly, I found my own voice. I also built a community outside my family. Friends who lifted me up, mentors who encouraged me, and teachers who believed in my potential. I learned that family isn't just who you're related to, it's who chooses to care for you. Looking back, I see how much those early wounds shaped me. They made me afraid to speak up, afraid to be myself. But they also made me resilient. I learned the power of setting boundaries, the importance of self-love, and that sometimes walking away is the bravest thing you can do. If you're listening and feeling the weight of family criticism, know this. You're not alone. Your feelings are valid. You deserve respect, kindness, and love from others, but most importantly, from yourself. Thanks for listening to my story. I hope it helps you find your strength too. After that difficult but necessary conversation with Aunt Lisa, I felt lighter, as if a weight had lifted.